Here we are on the front of our Grand Design Reflection. We're going to do a walkthrough tutorial just like you would get on the day of delivery, going through the operation of our unit so you have something to refer back to. There is also a deeper dive on some of these components as well as other components if your name brand differs in our Helpful Hacks section on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share, do all those awesome things so you can help support the channel and we can continue to do this. On the front of our unit, of course, we have our kingpin. We also have our 7-way plug right here. That 7-way plug is going to transfer all of your lights from your towing vehicle to the fifth wheel on here, as well as our battery charge line that'll pull off the alternator of the vehicle and charge your battery while you're traveling down the road. Last thing you'll have is your brake controller. Once it initiates off the brake pedal, it will send a brake signal through here to the brakes on the trailer. Well, speaking of brakes, we're also going to have our breakaway cable right here. This breakaway cable needs to be fastened to the truck itself, not to the hitch. The reason being is if something ever happens to the hitch, fifth wheel hitch in the bed of the truck, this is going to separate, pull off of the truck. We want that pin to pull out of that breakaway box and activate the brakes on our trailer. Now that can only happen if we have a good 12-volt system on our fifth wheel, meaning that we have a good solid charged battery. If we don't, then that system is not going to activate. We also need to make sure that pin is inserted in that box at all times, otherwise it will be locking up and activating those brakes when you don't want them to. In our front pass-through bay, we have our Furrion solar charge controller. Of course, we have our solar panels up on the roof. This is going to convert our solar power into a charging power for our battery system on our unit. There are a few settings on there in regards to what type of batteries you have, so on and so forth. I'd refer to the owner's manual just to be specific about different types and everything. It's a little bit to go into on that kind of stuff. So just know that all that stuff's in your owner's manual to get a better idea for your solar system. To the right of it, we're going to have our solar prep disconnect. Now what that's going to do is basically just disconnect our solar from our unit. In the event that we don't want to use it for whatever reason, we can go ahead and just shut it off, and that is going to completely disconnect it from our battery system, so it's not going to charge our system or anything. Now that is going to be separate from our actual battery disconnect. So if our battery disconnect is off, then this solar system is on. It's still going to connect to our batteries and charge our batteries off of that solar system, even if our disconnect is off, so no concern there. As far as our actual battery disconnect goes, it literally does what it says. It disconnects the battery from our RV system. We want to use this when we store our unit unplugged so we can conserve the battery power in here. Anytime we have our unit plugged in, whether it's storage or use, whatever the case may be, we want to make sure that switch is on. So the converter system, which is our battery charging system, will actually go ahead and charge that battery when we're plugged in. In here, we're going to have some fuses and resettable fuses that are thermal. They're going to automatically reset, so some slide outs and stuff operate off of some of these things. If your slide out stops, the electric ones, then you want to give it about 30 to 60 seconds to kind of cool down and then maybe go operate it again. There's not necessarily a whole lot in here that needs to be maintained. So don't worry about it. That's just where everything is. In the event that you have to go that deep into troubleshooting for 12-volt power, you would come here. We also have a set of fuses and stuff inside the unit we'll go over later. This is our actual converter, that charging system we spoke about. It's going to change our 110 power, which is coming in right here, to 12-volt power going right here out to our battery. That's going to go ahead and keep our batteries charged up. We do see a couple of fuses right here. We can check in the event this system isn't outputting correctly. This is going to operate whenever you're plugged in. If not, it's not going to operate, right? You have a little cooling fan on there, you'll hear operating whenever it is plugged in. Over to the left over there, we do have our inverter prep system. An inverter is going to change 12-volt power to 110 power. In the event we don't have a plug-in, want to operate a couple of small 110 appliances, we can do that. You are pre-wired for that system. And then we're also going to have our LCI leveling system right here. Our main control panel for all that is right above us, and that is where all your jacks and everything are going to go to as far as that system is concerned. We do have a few fuses on there. In the event it's not working, those operate our individual jacks. We do have other videos on our jacks and how it operates. Of course, we're going to go over the operation of this one too. Those will be under our Helpful Hacks section. Now I'll give you a quick turn right here, and we have our actual front individual leveling jacks. These are for our landing gears. On the bottom right here, we do have a little cap. That bottom cap would come off, and in there is our override. We have a 3/8 nut in there. You put that socket on a drill and you can manually run this jack up and down. Now, of course, these are individual, one on each side. Before you do that, you do want to disconnect your 12-volt plugs before you override that system. You only want to do this if you're having an issue with the jack, can't figure it out. You would go ahead and put that in there, and you would just run that drill in forward or reverse, depending on which way you need to operate that jack. Also want to add, with our leveling system, we want to make sure we have at least 6 holes showing on these landing gears. Otherwise, you're going to run out of stroke on these jacks in order to level your unit. So make sure we're using at least 6 holes. We can see them, count them on there, and you won't run into any errors as far as trying to level your system in regards to that. All right, here we are on the driver's side. Above me, we have our slide out for our bedroom. We do have the Lippert Slim Rack system on here. Control board is going to be in this pass-through bay mounted there on the ceiling of it. We'll have a video on Hap's Helpful Hacks about how to override this system if ever necessary. Here we have our front storage with our propane tank in there. We're going to have the same thing on the opposite side. On one of the 2 sides, you're going to have your dual propane tank regulator. The way it operates is you have both tanks on. Whatever that selector valve is pointed to, you can go ahead and swap which one you want to go to as your primary. That'll be the first tank that system pulls off of for your LP until it runs dry, in which case it will automatically swap over to that second tank so it doesn't interrupt your LP use. Once that second tank runs dry, that's it. But if you do happen to notice that gauge is red, that is for our primary tank. We can swap over to our secondary. It will make that the new primary, and we can go ahead and get that former primary tank replaced or refilled. In here we have our front storage compartment. This is where we have our LCI electric leveling system in order to operate our electric jacks. And we have our Lippert tire link system to be able to monitor our tires while we're traveling down the road. Already has the monitor, and we have our sensors on our tires, so we can go ahead and check on that while we're traveling. Also have our control center here. We're going to go over the operation of that as well as our leveling system right now. So we can see our electronic leveling system right here made by Lippert. If we kick it on, we can see on our main display right here, we're going to have our battery voltage. Whenever we hit our arrows, it brings us to our auto hitch height. Our auto hitch height is used after we have been camping. Basically, this will bring us back to the point that the trailer was at whenever we disconnected from our hitch on the truck, so you don't have to guess what level it needs to be at. If you want to use that feature, you just hit enter, and it will begin to extend those jacks out and put it at the height that it was in before you went into that auto level. Our next one is auto retract all. We would go to that once we are hooked up to the truck. We can hit enter, and it will retract all of our jacks. Now, you should definitely double check your 5th wheel hitch and ensure that you are locked in before you do this, because once you pull away, all the weight and everything relies on that 5th wheel hitch at that point. So be sure you're locked in good before you hit that auto retract all. Our next one is auto retract rear. If we want to just bring up the rear jacks and leave the front landing jacks down, we can go through that. And our last one is manual level. Manual level is if we wanted to go in, hit enter, and we can see right here we have our degree marks. Now 0 is our ultimate goal. That would mean that we're level. We would use these functions right here to raise those jacks. You'll have orange lights that pop up in the corners to let you know that those are indicating the areas where it is low. So if this blinking light on the left hand side is orange, then that means that our left side is low. Same thing on the right, front, and rear. So we would just raise that until that light goes out, and eventually once we hit that 0 mark, our green light in the middle will indicate that we are leveled out. If we need to retract those jacks, we'll just hold down that retract button for just a second. Our red light will come on indicating retract, and we can hit those buttons again and it will retract those jacks. Now front will run front, rear will run rear, and then if we want to do left or right, it will do those left or right jacks. To take off that retract, you just hold that button down for a second and it will go back. Now auto retract will once again retract everything. And our next one, it shows us our stroke on our jacks. So the LF and RF, that's left front and right front. So this is the amount that those jacks are extended out. And they only have so much stroke on them depending on what jacks they are. So if we stroke out, we run out of jack, you will get an error letting you know out of stroke. And that means that we need to put some blocks or get on a more level area that it doesn't have any more jack left to level that system, and it will stop the auto level. Same thing, left rear, right rear for our jacks. Also on this system, right whenever you turn it on, you can get your voltage display on there. And if you want to just operate your front landing gears, you just got to the campground, you're trying to disconnect from your truck, you don't have to go into that manual mode. You can go straight into operation by hitting those front jacks right there, and that will operate the landing gears in the front. Same thing if you want to retract them, hold down that retract for a second, and then it will operate once again just the front landing gears. From that point, you go into your auto level and allow the unit to level out. Now I want to make sure that we're not moving around in the unit while it is auto leveling. It'll take a few minutes to hit that auto level point. Once it says it's complete, then you're free to go ahead and open up your doors and get inside the unit and start setting everything up. On our control center, we have our satellite cable and auxiliary ports for our coax connections. If we have outdoor satellite, we can hook that up. Park cable, we hook that up there, and if we have a third connection we'd like to run through all our TVs, we can hook that up right there. We have our quick connect right here for our blue coiled hose. We can hook up a spray port there. This coax port on the side here runs directly to our outside TV that we can go ahead and hook whatever we want directly to that as well. We have a switch over here for our front cap lights and our slide lights. And we have another switch up in the top right corner, kind of hard to see. That is our water pump. That 12-volt water pump will pull from our onboard water storage, and it will supply water to our faucets on the inside in the event that we have actual water in that tank. We'll talk about how to fill that in a second. Our other option is our city water connection. Our city water connection is right here. This is where we would hook that water hose up. If we have a bib at the campground, we can hook that water hose up, turn it on. That will supply water to our fixtures. So if you didn't have that, you want to fill your fresh tank and use that water pump. Right here we have the combination of all the different options for how our water can go out into our unit. So we have our dry camping. So this would be if we have already filled our tank, we would go ahead and turn it to here. We turn that water pump on and it will pull from that tank. Next one is our power fill tank. We would have it in this option here to be able to fill that tank through that city water connection there. Now that onboard storage, once you add water to it, that does add more weight to our unit. If we don't want it, there is a valve underneath that we can go ahead and pull that and drain that water out. We don't want any more than what we need because of the added extra weight, and we don't want to leave it in there too long because that water will become stagnant over time. If we have a city water connection at the campsite, we can go ahead and hook that hose up right here, turn it to this configuration, and then we have our city water directly out to all of our stuff. Winterization option would pull from right here into our unit, and that end of that hose would need to go into a bottle of RV antifreeze. This is to be able to winterize your unit. There are more steps to this process. You can find that in your owner's manual or in our video on Hap's Helpful Hacks. Our last one is siphon sanitize to tank, which would be this configuration here. That is to sanitize that onboard water storage tank. You could do a mixture of bleach and water into that tank to go ahead and sanitize it and clean it out. Our next option over here is our black tank flush. That is to go ahead and flush out that sewage system out of our black tank. We would hook that up. We'll talk a little more about that when we get to our tank system. We do have a gray tank valve right here for that secondary gray tank outlet over here. Once again, we will go over the gray and black tanks when we get to those outlets. And we have a GFCI protected outlet right here on the side. Down at the bottom of our control center, we're going to notice we have our two gray tanks as well as our black tank right there for our valves. We'll talk more about that whenever we get to our dump station. All right, moving down the line, we have our Suburban furnace right here, going to be 12-volt controlled and propane in order to heat, and same thing for our Furrion tankless water heater, 12-volt controlled propane to heat that water. Our 50-amp power supply cord right here, that is going to connect in that plug, turn to the right, lock it in. We have a little retainer ring. We want to tighten that up on there, make sure it doesn't accidentally get pulled out by kids or anything like that. We also want to make sure we plug this in first, then plug it in over there to go ahead and keep from any arcing or anything, plugging this in second, and make sure our AC systems are off so we don't cause any surges of power to that. Down below our unit right here near our sewage port, we're going to see a red and blue line. Those are our low point drains. We talked a little bit about winterization in there. That is where we're going to drain that water out. More information once again in your owner's manual or in our HAPS Helpful Hack videos. We're also going to see a quick connect for our LP system right to the right of our sewage port as well. That is a line running to our cooktop and everything in our slide out right there. And they do that way if that slide ever has to be pulled out for whatever reason, we have a quick connect. If you want to disengage that system, you have that quick connect right there. You can go ahead and do that. Down below we have that sewage port we talked about. This is where we hook up our sewage line out to our port at the campground, and our valves in our front storage compartment is where we dump, right? So we have our two gray tanks. Let's talk about that. Gray tanks is shower water, sink water, fairly clean water. We can leave those valves open all the time and they can dump into our sewage. Now our black tank, however, we want to leave that valve closed until we are ready to dump. Reason being is that is coming from our toilets. We're going to have solids in there that we don't want to dry up. We'll always want to make sure we have several gallons of water in that tank and keep it there. So the procedure for dumping goes like this. We have our sewer hose hooked up. We pull that valve. We can hook our water hose up to that black tank flush and turn that system on. That water is going to lead to a jet port on the opposite side of this tank and help push any debris, sewage, so on and so forth out of that tank out to our valve, dump it, and you're good to go. Once you're satisfied with flushing your tank, turn that black tank flush off, close your black tank valve, then go on the inside of your unit, hold that pedal down for your toilet, and let the water run in there. You want to put several gallons of nice clean water in there and then drop your chemicals in there. Just travel down the road, it's going to slosh around, kind of clean that tank out a little bit as well, knock all that stuff down to water. Your chemicals are going to help dispose and decay anything else that's in that tank. Now we also have another pro tip video on our HAPS Helpful Hack section on cleaning out and flushing our black tank system if you want to take a look at that. We also have on our slide out, that is an electric slide out, we can go ahead and override it in the event we need to through a hole on the other side. Through this J-wrap, you're going to see a hole. You can put your crank handle in there and manually run that slide out in and out if necessary. We're going to notice our rear leveler right here. We can override that one by pulling that black plug out right there, disconnecting our 12 volts from it, putting a socket in there attached to a drill, and we can automatically retract that system with the drill in the event we need to override it. Up at the top of that slide out on the driver's side, you do see that vent up there. That is for our hood vent over our 3-burner stove. If you want to ventilate out, it does have a couple tabs on it. We need to make sure that are open whenever we store our unit. If we want to close them, prevent any insects from building nests, we can do that. We also have a hole down at the bottom right corner. That is for the slide out on the opposite side, that override, to be able to put a crank handle in there, and we can override that system. On the rear of our unit, we have our Furrion backup camera system already pre-wired for power. We can go ahead and install that system. We turn on our running lights on our unit. It's going to power up that Furrion backup camera to see behind us while we're traveling or when we're backing up. The rear of our unit, we also have a 4-way plug for lights and our receiver hitch with the tow hook option to be able to tow a little trailer behind us. So that's a nice convenient feature. Also, we have our factory supplied ladder there on the back. Why do I need to gain access to my roof? Well, it's very important because every 60 to 90 days you need to monitor, check, and reseal if necessary on the sealant on your roof, as well as the sealant around your windows, your trim, your lights. Anywhere we put a hole in the wall, there's probably sealant around it, and you need to check, make sure no water is getting in. So we're checking for peeling, cracking, deterioration, anything of that. We need to go ahead and clean it off and reseal anywhere where that we see that. It's suggested every 60 to 90 days to check that, whether you have it under a cover or not. I don't care. Check that stuff out, because water starts getting into your unit. It's going to deteriorate it. You're going to regret not having done it. Manufacturers aren't going to cover any repair as far as water leaks after the first 90 days. It's considered customer maintenance, just like changing the oil in your car. We also need to get up on that roof after trips, make sure we didn't poke any holes in there from any low-lying tree limbs or anything into that rubber. We need to clean that rubber at least twice a year as well. On the passenger side, we have our front compartment with our secondary propane tank, more access to our pass-through, and we're also going to have a quick connect for our LP system right here that'll pull off of those propane tanks, so if we want to go ahead and add a grill down here. On our rear slide out, we're going to notice our connection for that outside cable hookup, as well as satellite, and a GFCI protected outlet right there to plug it in. See that override right there? That's going to once again lead to the override post on our frame to operate that rear jack. We're also going to have another hole down at the bottom that can go ahead and crank to let down our spare tire. On our entry door, we do have that safety rail system. We can pull that pin out, run that system down, and we have an extra safety rail right there to store it. Flip it up, pull that pin back out, and latch it in there. On our entry door, we're going to notice some resistance on that door. That is our friction controlled hinges right there to keep the wind or kids from slamming that door whenever we don't want it to be slammed. We do have a little latch here on the back to be able to latch that door. Anytime we operate our solid steps, we want to make sure that door is open all the way so the hinge right there doesn't scratch up or tear up our screen on our door. Now, our solid steps are a really nice feature, but one thing we need to make sure we do after we auto level our unit is come out and level our steps. So in order to operate, we just flip them up. We do have some shocks right there on the inside to help assist with putting that up and down. We want to guide that in gently. We don't want to just let it go and flip it up in there because it can fall into the interior of the unit. When we're ready to pull them down, we just go ahead and pull that handle. And once again, you're going to have some resistance because you're going to have those helper shocks in there. To level it, we're going to have these silver tabs on each side right here. When we push them in, these legs extend and retract out manually, and that is how we level our system. So generally, I would put it in this position, push that tab down, and run those legs up and down until I found that level spot. What we're looking for is a nice flush threshold right here, nice and even, so when we close that door, we don't have any gaps or resistance trying to shut that door, making it more difficult. Now, also we want to make sure that when we are shutting it, that we are not interfering with frame to frame right here from our steps to our door, causing any damage there as well. Last thing we have to go over outside is our awning, 12 volt powered. Our awning lights are going to be 12 volt powered as well. Our awning is a sunshade, right? It's not intended to go ahead and keep us dry during a storm or anything like that. That water is going to pile up on there, awning is going to break, it's going to be an insurance claim, wind can take it, make it into a parachute, all that stuff. If sun's not out, pretty weather, all that stuff, roll that thing in. I promise you don't want to have to deal with the damages to it. When we do use it, we are likely going to have a little light dew as well as a little light rain, sprinkle or whatever on there, and we may also have some condensation from our AC get on top of it too. So it's always important to go ahead and pitch that awning. We can do that either on the front or the rear. Both of these arms are going to work the same, but you only do one side. Grab it right there and just pull it down. That is going to lean our awning over so any residual water that gets on there can go ahead and run off. Our awning on our other slide out is going to work the exact same way. Make sure we're pitching it, and when we're ready to restore that unit, go ahead and push it back up. Like I said, bring it in during storms. Also, if you're leaving your unit for an extended period of time, run it in then as well. As we walk in our entry, if we open that cabinet door, we'll see our Compass Connect pad. We can download that app and we can Bluetooth connect to it so we can see some of this stuff on our phone, monitor our tanks, operate some of our lights, and so on. Up here, you'll see all of your tank levels, your fresh tank, your black tank, your two gray tanks, as well as your battery level right there. We have our awning lights, our ceiling, interior steps, exterior steps, so on and so forth for all of our lights. We have our 12 volt water pump right here. That water pump is to pull the water from that fresh tank system that we talked about. That will go ahead and put water to our fixtures in our unit. If we have a city water connection, we want to go ahead and leave that off. No reason to have it on. And also we'll notice that this is an on-demand pump, so you're only going to hear it run whenever you're operating your faucets and so on. And if you hear it running and you're sure all of your faucets and water are off, then you want to turn it off because either your fresh tank is empty or maybe you have a water leak, and we want to investigate that. So keep that in mind. We don't want to burn that pump up, especially if there's no water in that fresh tank system. It will burn it up from running dry. We also have our tank heaters in here, which are 12 volt mat heaters on our tanks in extreme cold weather. We want to kick those on so it will keep our tanks from freezing up. Down here we have our awnings and slide outs. Once again, all 12 volt operated components. As we move down from our control panel, looking down here, we have our 110 breakers all labeled in our system. So if we have any issues with those 110 appliances, we can come directly here. We'll notice our GFCI breaker over here. This is going to control all those GFCI protected outlets throughout our unit, mainly in wet locations and outside. If we have issues with those, we want to come here. Sometimes they trip because those outlets got wet. Sometimes they trip because we have too many 110 appliances plugged in, like griddles and coffee pots and so on and so forth. Moving just to the side of that, down from the counter, this is where our 12-volt fuses are. On that cover, they're all going to be labeled as to what those control, so that's where we would go for that. Down on the side of our island, we have our LP detector. That's going to let us know if any LP leaks are in our system and evacuating in our unit. Still suggested you get that leak test done once a year on your LP system. But this is going to let you know we do have that audible alarm. We'll push that down. It'll alert you. Green light lets you know it's powered up. It is hardwired in our 12-volt battery system, so no fuses for that. It is going to be linked directly to that 12-volt system. We're also going to have a CO and smoke detector mounted on our ceilings. We need to check the batteries in those and test the audible alarms on them pretty regularly as well. Last thing, they do have an expiration date either printed on the front or the back of this. You do need to change that out when it does reach that date. Here we have our double door Furrion fridge. We'll go over the operation of that right now. All right, so here we have our Furrion residential fridge. We have a freezer on this side, fridge on this side, and we have our control center right here. We can see that we have our couple of options. We have fridge, freezer, function, and lock. In order to change into these functions, we need to make sure that lock icon is gone. So we can do that by holding down on the word itself, not the icon. Eventually that will go away. Now we can change the temperature on our fridge and freezer if we wish by pressing, once again, the words, not the numbers. Now we have a couple of functions on here. The first function is a little umbrella with a sun on it. That is our vacation mode option. That is going to be considered to be off-grid. So it's going to reduce the amount of work that compressor is doing. That way we're not using as much power. Let's say that we're working off of our batteries and we don't want to use as much power, so we want to put that in that vacation mode. This screen will auto lock itself, so if you open it back up and you're messing with it, you may see that lock icon come back on. We just hold that button once again. Our next mode is a little snowflake. That is our super freeze mode. That's going to drop the temperature down more on our freezer and help cool, super freeze whatever we might have put in there, right? Our next one is a little drop with a snowflake on it, and that is going to be our fridge cold mode. So our super cold mode for our fridge side, same thing. We can activate those both individually or at the same time. We keep clicking them and then all of them will go away. Now once everything's gone, that would just be normal operation and we can go ahead and adjust that temperature whatever we want. The other ones are set already for those modes. Now we're also going to have an option on here if we store our unit, we want to put it in, they call it a low power mode. It's basically turning everything off. If we hold down that lock button once again to unlock it and we hold down the function for 5 seconds, the system is going to turn off. We'll notice some dashes right here. That shuts your compressor off. That shuts the lights off inside the fridge. That's basically how we turn this system off. So if we're storing our unit, we want to shut it down. We also want to defrost this freezer, get any water out of it, moisture, anything like that. Same thing for our fridge. There's no drain tubes on these, so that water is all it's going to do is leak out. Make sure we put towels on the floor, wipe all of it out because that can cause damage to any wood components around it. So make sure we're maintaining this properly. You're also going to have a little travel knob for your refrigerator to help ensure that your goods don't fall out. Take that, screw that into that hole up top, and you tighten that down while you're in travel to keep those doors from opening. Further on in our kitchen, we have our 110 microwave with that hood range vent. We can go ahead and ventilate air out. We want to make sure that vent on the outside is opened up whenever we do that, otherwise the air isn't going to actually vent out. Over here we have our stovetop by Furrion residential oven and stovetop. 3 burners up top. Make sure our propane is on. Come over here, initiate, push down, and we can light our stovetop. Common thing with propane is you'll get air in the system. Let's say you stored your unit, you turned your propane tanks off, you bring it back out of storage, you're going to end up with air in the system. Or if you replace your tanks, you're going to end up with a little air in this system. In order to bleed that air out, we just come over here and light that stovetop. It may take a couple seconds for that propane to go through the line and the air to bleed out and it finally light, but that's how we'd go ahead and bleed the air out of the system, the easiest way to do it. We want to do that before we operate things like our furnace and our water heater. That way it prevents them from going into a fault due to not lighting because there's air in the system. We have our oven down below, very similar system. We're going to have that pilot down there at the bottom. We're going to have our light right here. we go ahead and turn it to light. We have to push that knob down on that flame sense, let it run until it actually ignites. Once it lights, we hold it down and we can turn to our temperature right there. We do have an oven light on the side. We have our knobs right there, and that can light up our knobs there on the oven. In our living room, we have our TV and our 110 fireplace. We'll go over information on our 110 fireplace here in a second. For our TV, all of our TVs, everything, you're gonna have a coax plate on there for antenna and cable. For antenna, if we're shooting or scanning for antenna channels, you have an antenna boost. That button's gonna be behind here on the antenna plate right there, that coax plate. You hit that button and the red light will turn on, letting you know antenna boost is on. It'll help pick up more channels in that area. However, when you're hooked up to cable at the campground, you want to push that button and turn that light off so it doesn't scramble the channels when we're scanning for cable. So that's going to be located behind this TV right here. So remember, light on for antenna, light off for cable. And now we'll go over our fireplace. Here we have our fireplace. We have a sensor right up here in the top right. We have to aim that remote at to turn it on. We have our Celsius and Fahrenheit temperature we can change to. And right here, this little flame icon is going to change the dimness of our flame. If we want to change the lighting of our flame, we hit the light bulb on the screen down here at the bottom, and it'll give you some different options right there. If we want to operate our heater on a timer, once again, electric heater, it is going to be this button right here. It looks like a clock, and when we push it, we can see some times pop up: 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, all the way up to 8, and then it will go to 0 hours, letting you know that that timer is off. If we want to change our temperature, we'll use one of these two buttons at the bottom, and we can see once again we have a temperature down there, and we will go ahead and raise it until it kicks on, or lower it, we want it to kick off, or we can keep going until it says on, and that heater will stay running all the time. We kick it up one more time and it's going to say OF, meaning that that system is off. In the living room area, this will fold out into an extra bed for sleeping. On our recliners, they're manual pull those out, they'll recline out. Have lights, massaging seats, as well as heated seats there in the recliners. Coming up our stairs, we have our max air vent control, which will control the max air fan in the kitchen. We can open the vent lid, close the vent lid. You got 4 speeds on it, and then the button to turn it off. Pretty self-explanatory. We'll go over more information on our Furrion thermostat for our air conditioner that will control the AC in the living room as well as your heat throughout the unit. We'll start with our cool option first. Our cool will cool the air throughout our unit. We of course set our thermostat to whatever point we want it to be, and we have our fan speed options. We have low and high. For low and high, that fan will run all the time. Now whenever we want that fan to cut off, whenever the compressor cuts off, much like we likely do at home, we have it on auto. That system will shut off and on with the compressor. Our next mode is our heat mode. Our heat mode activates our gas-powered furnace on our unit. We choose our set point, and our heater will come on whenever necessary. There is fan speeds on here, but it does not change the fan speed on that furnace. It is a single fan speed on there controlled by the furnace board. Our next mode is our fan mode. Our fan mode simply circulates air throughout our unit without cooling it or anything. This will come out of our rooftop air, and we can just change from high to low to control that fan speed if we wish. That fan will stay on the entire time when we have it in our fan mode. Our last mode is our dry mode. Our dry mode is like a dehumidifier. We can choose our set point, and it will cool our unit down to that set point, and it will continue to cool past that, but alternate every 6 to 10 minutes off and on. That way it doesn't drop that temperature too low and freeze you out of the unit, but it still dries the air in your unit. Another thing to note with our furnace is that the air is going to come out of the vents on the floor. It's not going to come out of the rooftop air. Your only rooftop air is going to be your fan and your cool and your dry. Your heat will come out of those floor vents from the furnace. Here we are in our bathroom. In our shower, we have our standard hot cold faucet as well as an on-off button on the shower head. That's generally used whenever you don't have a dump station or you don't have city water. You're trying to conserve the amount of water you put into your gray tank as well as the amount of water you use out of your fresh tank system. So it's just an easier way to turn that water off and on in between showering off and lathering up. we can go ahead and just hit that button up there versus trying to find the sweet spot for the hot water on our faucet. You want to use it, you can. If you don't have to. You have that dump station in city water, you don't need to. Beyond that, we do have a vent up in the ceiling with a fan on it. When you flip that switch right there, kick our 12-volt fan on. We want to emit any humidity and stuff out of here to help reduce the risk for mold and mildew in this bathroom. Our toilet right here, pretty standard. We have a valve there. We're going to push it to go ahead and flush anything down. Only things we're putting in there is number 1, which is your liquids, right? We put that in there. We can just hit the pedal and flush. Number 2, which is your solids. We want to make sure we fill that bowl about half to 3/4 of the way with water so we have enough to actually push those solids down to your black tank and not have any clogging in your system. In order to do that, barely push that pedal down right there and water will start coming out into that bowl and we can go ahead and fill it up. Number 3 is going to be RV toilet paper only. We want to make sure we get appropriate toilet paper so it degrades properly in that tank and doesn't cause any clogging whenever you go to flush it out. Last thing is our chemicals. Our chemicals help degrade whatever deposits are in there, and they also make it smell nice. In our bathroom, we also have our Furrion tankless water heater. We'll go over the operation of that right now. In our bathroom, we'll see our Furrion tankless control center. Pretty simple. We have our power on, off and on, kick it on. That's going to be our set point for our water. We can change that by hitting our up and down buttons right there. Our indicators right here, power, Fahrenheit, Celsius. If we want to change one to the other, we hit that bottom right button, and flame. Flame is only going to kick on whenever we turn that hot water on, indicating that system is working. And once again, on demand, it'll only come on whenever we have that hot water on. All right, front bedroom, we have our AC system in here with a separate thermostat. This one is only going to control this AC and no heat. Thermostat in the hallway is the only one that controls the heat. We'll notice on both of our ceiling assemblies, we have this vent right here we can turn off. By closing it like that, that will force more air through our ceiling ducts right there. So if we want the air to travel throughout our unit, we have to have these closed on both of them. This is called a quick dump valve. If we want to cool off just this area more, open that up, that air will be forced out of there. Now we do have a filter on both of our ceiling assemblies. It's suggested we change that or clean it regularly. We pull those 2 tabs down. We can clean that filter and put it back in so we're not restricting airflow to that AC system. It can work efficiently. We do have storage underneath our bed right here, help assisted with those shock arms. And in our closet, we are prepped for a washer dryer combo as well.
Well, we hope you found that resourceful, but wait, there's more information on our Great American RV YouTube channel. This channel right here, find the playlist Hap's Helpful Hacks. We go over different products in this unit and we'll take a deeper dive with more diagnostics, more information, as well as helpful tips when you're out camping. Tell your buddies, tell your friends, like, share, subscribe, do all those awesome things on YouTube, TikTok, wherever you found us. And keep watching here at Great American RV SuperStores. We bring the how-to you.